The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and it's my privilege to introduce another episode of When the Jints, Them Bums, and the Yanks played in New York. I have the three. Now, we've been joined by a third person in the booth who's a maven of the times. And first person here is Noel Hynd. How are you, Noel?
I am getting by as well as anybody, Ralph. Thank you.
I know, and that's we're all in this boat, hunkered down, and taking an hour or so to get out of ourselves and at least have something to think about other than the situation. I don't think it's been worse in my lifetime. You guys are my age. If you can come up with something that is worse, let me know. But Alan Blumkin is here. Hello, Alan.
Hello there, everybody.
Okay, Alan, thanks for joining us. And the leader in today's discussion is going to be David Nemec, a sports historian, if ever there was one the grandfather of baseball trivia, and that is saying something, and an expert in old-time baseball and present-day baseball. But without any further ado, to lead the conversation today, Mr. David Nemec.
Thank you, Ralph. A pleasure to be with you all again.
What's going on?
Well, I go back a little farther than probably most of you do, so I do remember something that certainly not the equivalent of what we're going through today, but on the order of, and that's the blackouts during World War II, where we would have to hunker down, turn the lights out, and even go down the basement. And stay down there for a few hours. And it was just a drill, nothing ever more than that. But it was always a very eerie experience for me as a little kid. And I still vividly remembered it. And it was one of the things I first thought of when I realized the situation we were in. Even though I was looking out the window, seeing a bright sky, the thought of going out there and mixing it up with anybody was pretty scary. And I've kept pretty much to myself, as I'm sure you have too, for what we've experienced so far.
Let me throw in back to you in terms of what we were dealing with, because I guess we're all dealing with the virus right now, or trying not to get it, and filtering it a little into our baseball discussion. But I can remember the polio epidemic. I was talking to my wife, who, of course, was born long after it. But I can remember the polio epidemic in the mid-'50s. And that's really the closest thing that I can equate this to. I can remember my father not letting me go anywhere near a swimming pool. And then when our doctor got the Salk vaccine in his office, I think my sister and I were the first two people in the door. Both of you were slightly older than I am, so do you remember it that way also, and having a parallel situation?
Yes, they gave us sugar cubes initially, and then when they were able to use injections to give it to us, they started that. I remember taking sugar cubes. I think I was in 1955. I think I was in the 6th grade by then. And, 1954 may have been a year earlier. But, I remember that. And, everybody was afraid. And then, I don't know if you remember, but Vic Wirtz came down with it in 1955. Yeah. It was
non-paralytic. He missed the last part of that season, but came back to play a full season, the next couple of years.
Yeah, it was a factor in my childhood too. I lived right on Lake Erie, and Lake Erie was considered one of the main contaminants. But still, nevertheless, we went swimming. No kids ever caught polio when I was, at least not in my class, or even in my school while I was there. But I learned later that two cousins who lived right next door to each other, both girls, who were in my class. They swam on a separate beach at Lake Erie, and both of them came down with multiple sclerosis, very serious, and died very young.
Wow!
And they both attributed it to swimming in Lake Erie at their beach, and certainly no one could ever disprove it.
Individually with me, this was not, nationwide or even statewide, was my battle with selective service in the 60s. They wanted me, to draft me for 2 years, and they deferred me a couple of times. They changed my classification. I appealed it. I had to go before the draft board, and I took one look at them, and then I realized all I was a number to them to fill a quota, and I wound up in the Army Reserve. That's a long story in itself, but that was really, really, for anybody of our age who was subject to the draft. This is before they had the lottery. That was to try to get out of it one way or the other was a very, very, it was a very tough time for a lot of people.
No, I couldn't get out. I did the same thing you did, Al, and was very grateful to have done it because my reserve unit was next to go to Berlin when Kennedy started calling up the troops to go to Berlin. Unfortunately, we managed to escape that, but so the 6 months was all I did. But I was sweating.
We don't sound like we were very enthusiastic warriors, do we?
No.
Not after having been in the Army. Once you had that experience, you realized you did not want to go and be with. You liked some of the guys, but you did not want to go and be with the commanding officers and the NCOs. You just did not want to be with them and trust your life to them.
Well, if we can go off on a little bit of a tangent from baseball on this, when I went to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. When I got there, I was not as opposed to the war in Vietnam as I eventually became. So I joined Army ROTC, and I was in Army ROTC, and of course you guys both remember the deal was you serve your time and then you go in as an officer. And most people who were in ROTC with me at Penn were there basically because they were trying to avoid being drafted and having to go in as an enlisted guy, which made you even worse cannon fodder than as a second lieutenant. So I couldn't believe, for the 2 years that I was in ROTC, I couldn't believe how stupid these officers were. And these were the guys who had been assigned to an Ivy League university to teach the ROTC course. They had some former officers there, mostly majors. There was a colonel who was the head of the whole Penn regiment. But then there were these sergeants. And most of us, even kids who were smart kids and working class kids, had rarely seen people quite as stupid in their lives. There's this one guy, Sergeant, I'm sure he's no longer alive, so I can talk about him, Sergeant Emilio Tedeschi from Brooklyn. And he was a World War II, Korea, and Vietnam veteran. He was a sergeant major, which was a sort of the end of the line for sergeants. It was an honorary thing. They put you in something easy for the final 2 years, and then presumably you collected a pension for as long as you could have a pulse. And basically, one day he was starting to tell us about World War II, and he could never pronounce the word azimuth. He would call it an azimuth. and you had to take a back azimuth to figure out a troop's location. And he was telling us how one time he did it wrong in Germany when he was fighting, and 8 people from his battalion got killed because he had mismeasured this thing. And all of us are just sort of looking around, and we're thinking we're going to go in and get orders from or be subjected to command decisions with a guy like this. So the nice way to say it is a lot of us dropped out at the last possible moment, which was the end of our sophomore years. You had to commit during really at the end of your sophomore year, sometime during the summer. And parenthetically, it was the summer of 1968 with the Democratic Convention. And I could remember watching this stuff on television, as I'm sure you did, thinking, I think I might be happier teaching or joining the Peace Corps or something. So that was the end of my military career. And then I got really lucky in the draft lottery, December of the year I graduated. So I don't know how you got me on that riff, but I agree with you. The more you solve it, the more you realize you didn't want your life to depend on a decision being made by some of these career guys.
Yeah, I had a saying when I was in basic training and the advanced training for 4 months. This is in September through 68 through October 68 through January 69. I had a saying that every Fort Dix. When I was I went home after the 4 months. They gave me $4 to take a bus back.
You were lucky. We didn't get anything.
Yeah. So basically, I had a saying that whenever I thought they reached the highest stupidity, they managed to surprise me.
Yeah.
The one that said, one day this is in December 68. We were supposed to do Vietnam training. Not that any of us were going there, because it was all reservists, and I was in with all reservists. The day they sent us out, the Monday, there were 15 inches of snow on the ground. It doesn't snow in Vietnam too much. So we're there with full field pack, and we're supposed to stay there overnight. And then somewhere around 2, 3 o'clock, they realized that if they kept us out any longer, that they'd have to write sick reports for everybody. So they took us back, and we went back into the barracks. The next day we fall out at 5:30, the usual 5:30 in the morning. They said, go back, you're not supposed to be back from bivouac until 7:30.
Yeah,
it's just one insanity after the other.
Yeah, I had an even worse experience, but I'm not going to go into it because I don't know who's listening, and there are still some of us alive who took part in it. And it told me, and that knows on certain terms, that was it. When Vietnam came, I wasn't going no matter what happened, and I still had some reserve time. I believe I left, and that was it. But it's strange getting off on this tangent, but and we probably should jump back into at least maybe a semblance of wartime baseball or something to bring us back to humanity.
Well, let's that's not a bad idea. But going back to the polio epidemic, how long did that go on? I can just kind of remember the tail end of it. But that
I think it went a year or two, something like that.
In the mid-50s, right?
In the mid-50s, but nothing shut down. There were no, it's not like this where they shut down everything.
No,
there's nothing like that. Yeah.
But
it was really a hit or miss who got it.
One wonders whether they could have or should have, but of course people weren't.
Now this is 65 years ago.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because it is an interesting parallel. And they did not shut down, and it was every bit serious, if not more so, than the coronavirus. But it wasn't as prevalent. And you had just no way in the world, absolutely no way of predicting who was going to get it, how they were going to get it, and how long it was going to last, how serious a case it was going to be. Of course, part of it was because 60, 70 years ago, we didn't know where we were medically as well as we do now. But it's a very interesting parallel. I'm surprised more hasn't been done with it.
Well, as far as I know, Vic Warch is it was the only major leaguer to come down with that. Maybe the only prominent one. There may have been some marginal guys that came down with it.
There were some minor leaguers. There were a couple of promising minor leaguers whose careers were over after they got it. I remember a guy with the Red Sox organization. I can't remember his name. I think he was with Louisville, and he got it. Billy something or other. Back in the 50s, and I don't remember ever reading about him after he got polio.
Well, part of the thing that brought the polio thing home, almost literally to me, my father was a true crime writer, and he wrote for, among other people at the time, True Magazine. And there was another writer-editor at True Magazine at the time named Ken Purdy. Ken later Ken was an automobile guy. He loved old cars like Bugattis and Duesenbergs, and he would always write about them. And eventually Hugh Hefner came along and stole Purdy away. Hefner just called him out of the blue one day and said, I've got this new magazine in Chicago. Would you like to come over, and be your automotive guy? And it was basically it was not too long after Hefner had just started up. But Ken had a son who was a little older than I, and one day my father told me, we're not going over to Ken's house anymore. Jeff, his son, has polio. And I saw Jeff one more time in my life, and that was about 2 years later, and they had remodeled the house because he was paralyzed for life and remained so, and got around in a wheelchair. And I just saw him from a distance, and it was such a shock to me. I was 8 or 9 years old at the time. Later on in life, I became friends with a fellow named James DePriest, who was he died just a few years ago in his 70s. He was 10 years older than I, but he got it in the mid-50s. He was a classical music guy and later became a conductor, pretty well-known one. He was head of the Montreal Symphony and I think the Monte Carlo Symphony for a number of years. Also Marian Anderson's nephew from Philadelphia. And Jimmy walked with braces and crutches for the rest of his life after the affliction in the 1950s. So it was perhaps more limited, as you suggested, but also an absolutely terrifying disease. And much like this corona thing, if you got it at its worst, it was going to either end your life or ruin your life, or shall we say, impact it very heavily. Because, of course, DePriest went on and was successful, but it was always a limitation, and was always flying was always a challenge. But I don't remember Major League Baseball making any changes to its schedule, for example, the way they have now.
They didn't. In 1954 and 1955, in the last 2 years, this is never going to happen again. They played World Series games in September.
Yeah. Who knows how much it spread at ballparks, too.
I think what's going to happen, whenever they come back, even if they come back July 1st, they're not going to make up, all the games. They'll just pick it up, and they'll play 90 games or whatever, and then they'll have the whole postseason.
This year, you mean?
I think that if they're able to resume, at a certain point, they'll pick up the schedules from there. They won't play the postponed games or canceled games. This is what they did in 1972. after there was a strike going on that year over pensions, and the first 2 weeks of the season were wiped out, and they didn't make it up, and they didn't play an equal number of games, and the Tigers wound up beating the Red Sox in the AL East by half a game. I think this is what's going to happen, assuming they can resume resume the schedule whenever that comes to pass.
Yeah, I'm frankly wondering whether they're even going to have a season, to tell you the truth. When you start looking at these projections of, the vaccine not being available for a year, what is that? What are the implications of that? You're taking your life and health in your hands, going to a ballpark in the, in August of this year. One wonders, to get the TV money, will they play in empty stadiums?
Yeah, one of the big issues is going to be with the union's service time. The union will want service time for the regular schedule.
Right.
Yeah, and I can see that developing. And of course, they have to give the advertisers back all their money from the unplayed games, and the ones that are really getting hurt by this are all the vendors.
Yeah.
And all of the people who work, they're not ball players are going to be very, very hurt financially by this.
Well, some of the teams are putting together packages to take care of these guys. I know I read the other day that Cleveland was doing it. I'm sure other teams are doing it also, and it's. I'm glad they are, because it's certainly, these guys really need the whole season to make their year, make what they need, just to live on.
Now, I think if the NBA and the NHL resume at some point, they're going to go directly into the playoffs. They're not going to make up the games that they've lost the last few weeks here.
But what do you think? You think they'll be playing in front of live audiences, or
who knows?
Big TV studio.
They moved the Kentucky Derby to September, and they moved the Masters to golf. God knows when. And the French Open tennis has been put off for a few weeks, but it's very, very hard to see how this thing is going to run its course. Yeah. I mean, today on TV they had nothing from like 10:30 through 1 o'clock. You had New York Governor Cuomo, then Trump, and then Governor Murphy from New Jersey. It was nonstop. They didn't even stop for regular news or anything. It was just nonstop statements, and they're all saying the same damn thing. And they're really banging your head with this stuff on the networks. And you can't go from ABC to CBS to NBC because they're all doing it.
Yeah. It almost makes the war years look quaint.
Yeah.
You look back and but of course anything looking back has the rose tint of nostalgia on it also. It sort of looks like this almost great adventure, and we know the outcome. Our side won, but I know they were the very bleak years in the mid-40s, but you're almost dealing with a more understandable enemy, really. The enemy was Hitler. The enemy was Imperial Japan. Here, the enemy could be an unwashed apple. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw on TV they had an interview with some guy laying in a hospital who almost died from it. He's recovering now. It's a slow recovery. And he was describing what the whole thing was like. He said if you got up out of a bed, you'd feel it all, and then when you lie down in the bed, that there's some relief. But they said there were breathing problems. There's a whole bunch of things that this guy discussed from his hospital bed. And also, they try to send him home, and says, "How am I going to go home? I have nobody to care for me." You're going to get somebody to drive me. So it's a whole thing, and they're making a whole major deal out of hospital beds and ventilators and everything that goes along with this. I mean, there's some people are going to make a ton of money off this, but most people are going to lose money on this. They have an Amazon warehouse in Queens, and somebody came down with it in the warehouse. So you're right. It's an unseen enemy, and our peerless leader yesterday was thought to call it the China virus, which meant people were going to attack Asians, Americans, and the tempers, especially in a city like this, are going to get very, very short.
Yeah, it's hard to speculate.
Well, the fact that the crime is down because people aren't on the street right now. But at some point,
stores are also sealed up shut. So and restaurants, that all that adds to it.
The restaurants, the bars. There's a supermarket chain that opened at 6 o'clock in the morning, and only let seniors in from 6 to 7:30. And then 7:30, anybody could come in. And and the theaters are all shut. The movie theaters are all shut.
Yeah.
All the concert places like Lincoln Center are shut. All the gyms are shut. All the libraries are shut. I mean, everything is closed down.
Yeah, in my community, they closed all the indoor activities, including the clubhouses. I live in an over 55 community, and they kept all the outdoor activities open. You can play tennis, you could golf, you could go do lawn bowling, pickleball, all that. Well, yesterday they closed that too, so I think something's going. They learned something since.
Yeah.
They made the first closure. And that it kind of worries me, because if it means the outdoor activities are closed too, that there's something more serious perhaps than we're even, yet aware of. And
do you still play tennis?
I can imagine. Infrequently and not very well, but I do still try to get out because it's an activity I have to continue doing. I have to do something. And I really don't do well on treadmills and stuff like that. So, So I do play every couple times a week, and that's going to put a real crimp in my style because other than walking, and I can't walk very far. That's the best I have.
Yeah, and of course all the casinos are shut down.
Yeah.
I have a friend that I retired 10 years ago, and he has locked himself in. He's in Atlantic City 99% of the time, and he goes from hotel to hotel, depending on where he'll get free stuff, free room or whatever. And I don't know what he's been doing this for 10 years. He comes back to Brooklyn every once in a while to get his mail, and then he goes right back down there. And I don't know what's going to happen with him. I had assumed that they're shutting all the hotels associated with the casinos because, there's nothing to do. So I don't know I haven't heard from him, so I don't know what's becoming of him.
I don't know either.
But he's locked himself into this existence, and it is what it is. Yeah, my brother's business is getting hurt very badly because he can't. He deals with children's clothing, and most of his suppliers come from China.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's what it is. It's really hard the whole world economy, and Trump is on there saying that once this is over, the economy will rebound here and be better than ever. Of course, he said it was the best in history before this. But I mean, my tolerance for listening to politicians is low to begin with.
Yeah,
and they're on every single day. What are you going to do?
Are either of you going out very much, or how are you?
No, I'm in all the time because I'm on a walker.
Yeah,
I can't go out really very much because it's very, very tough. So I'm inside a lot, and I have several doctor appointments which I need to schedule by cab because of this. Because I'm not, it's not life threatening.
Do you have an elevator in your building?
So I don't get out. I hardly ever get out.
Okay.
Yeah.
David,
I manage to get out every day, at least to walk my dog, and we have gone out. We went to a restaurant the other day, the last day before it closed. We figured it was going to happen. I mean, more or less for the experience and the satisfaction of being out one more time, because who knows how long we're not going to be able to get out. We went and probably took a big chance, but anything is chancy, I think, at this point. You just don't know. You could go out, take a walk, and touch a railing, and forget to wash your hands, and you come back, and that could be it.
Yeah. Did either of you have a withdrawal? Because when they stopped all the basketball, I had a withdrawal that lasted about 3 days.
Not as much as I expected. No. I realized how much less I've been watching sports, less and less every year for the past 5 or 6 years. And it's at a point now where I know they're playing replays and stuff like that. I kind of miss March Madness, but I don't miss the NBA. I don't miss the National Hockey League. I don't miss watching tennis. And it'll be interesting when baseball season starts. What I'm going to feel. But right now, that's a good question.
I have on my DVR. I have a tremendous backlog of movies. So I can do. I watched the movie Trumbo the other day for the first time, and I have a backlog of movies that I can put up anytime I want to. So that's basically. I'm doing a little bit more reading. I used to be able to read books in a day. I can't do that anymore. But you do. After a few days, I found that I started to compensate for this. There's not a hell of a lot I could do about it.
Let me ask you about a certain movie, if I might. And I know Evelyn has a tremendous collection too. And between the two of you might just have it. It's a movie called Seconds, made back in the 60s.
No, I haven't even seen that. I haven't seen that available.
I haven't seen it available.
TCM or any of those. I haven't seen that available in years.
Yeah, but you're aware of it.
I'm aware of it. Yeah, sure I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since If it came out in the mid-'60s, that was the last time I saw it. I don't ever remember it being on TCM or any of those type of stations. Everything is, you have to understand that everything with these is rights. TCM has days where they run all these 1930 movies that are 2 stars because they have to fill programming, and if they negotiate with somebody who has a rights to a particular movie, then it comes down to money. If TCM feels they're asking for too much, there's no deal.
It's a Rock Hudson film, right? That we're talking about?
Yeah, it is. It is a Rock Hudson film. It was a very interesting film. Well done,
by John Frankenheimer.
Yeah, exactly. And I did luck out. I saw it, never dreaming that I would never be able to see it again. It was a good movie, but I didn't think it was that good. And
you might try.
Things I do when I got Netflix to try to find it. And
you might try YouTube, David.
You
might try YouTube. YouTube has a lot of stuff. I mean, one of my favorite actors, I don't know if you guys remember him at all, was a very heavy-set guy who died at the age of 28, crashed diet, Led Krager. You know the name?
Oh, yeah. He was in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. No, he wasn't in that.
That was Victor Borlo.
Jackie. Yeah,
that was Victor Borlo. Led Krager did the Lodger, and this was back in the early mid-40s. And he did one called Hangover Square.
I saw that too.
Yeah, which he plays a pianist who, and the guy is, gives the impression of, being very, very, he did the Lodger. He's was very, very good at giving the impression of somebody totally out of control.
Yeah.
So I found Hangover Square on the YouTube.
Did you?
Yeah, oh yeah.
To take a look.
It's because I haven't seen that available ever on TCM. So YouTube might. I'm not saying they do, but they might.
Well,
Seconds is on YouTube. I just looked.
Is it really? Oh my God!
Yeah.
I have to go.
Well, they've got a preview for it, and the implication is that it's there, but you have to subscribe to YouTube to get it.
Okay.
But if you go there, you can navigate through, and you'll see for sure. I didn't want to drop my attention to the conversation that presumably I'm having.
That's a great find.
There's very little you can't find on YouTube. You can even find me on YouTube.
Now, when you put in, when I put in Yogi Berra, when I'm really down, I put in Yogi Berra, and there's a million, things, of Yogi Berra. And then if I really want to, really down, I put on the Phil Rizzuto Hall of Fame induction.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you remember that.
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, it's a total toward the stream of consciousness. Yeah, and then the funniest part is when Berra and Betts got up to mock going out. Rizzuto says, "Look at those 2 catches; they were hit by too many foul balls." The whole thing is a complete stream of consciousness.
Uh-huh.
It'll be the funniest Hall of Fame speech probably ever. And they've got games. They got full games. Like the 1952 last 2 games of the World Series that they found years ago, and those are on YouTube. YouTube is tremendous. It's got so much stuff on it that it's unbelievable. And a lot of it is free.
Yes, it is.
Mm.
No, I'm sure you're aware of the Kuntz thing.
Yeah, what happened, David?
On The Eyes of Darkness.
Yeah, they'll have. I looked that up on Amazon and eBay. All they sell audio discs. eBay has a paperback available for $34.99 plus shipping. It's totally out of print.
Supposedly is number one on the Times bestseller list for paperbacks.
Yeah, that's a long time ago. You go to YouTube or you go to Amazon and you say, "Oh, it's the only thing that's available is audio."
Huh. What was I looking at?
Yeah, and when they're selling the the paperback and the hardcover is a lot of money.
I don't know. I never heard of the book. I read him. I read a lot of his stuff. And he's pretty wild.
Because I looked after we talked about it the other day. I looked it up on both Amazon and eBay, and it was startling to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah, and the media doesn't seem to have done anything very much with it. I'm surprised because I think there's something there anyway. Nobody seems to have interviewed him either. I'm waiting for that. You know, I don't know where Rachel Maddow is, but time for her to get out there and drum him up.
You want to hear a story? My friend Al Anderson out in Ohio, I think it was 2 years ago, he was looking for 3 Topps 1952 high numbers to complete a set. So he gave me the high numbers. I told him who these guys were because I have that set memorized. And so they were, the first 2 were relatively ordinary for high price. They were $100 and something. The third one was Tony Barterom. And the prices on eBay, there were about 3 or 4 available, were like $300, $400. So he says, why? I said, I don't understand this. Why a good guy like this who wasn't very good, but 1 year it hit 220, the card is so expensive. So I did a little research, and I found out that one of his relatives went around buying up all the 1952 Topps cards and made them scarce.
Wow.
But he found somebody who would, eventually give him it for what he thought was a reasonable price, because he knew a lot of dealers. But this was the whole story: is that this relative was buying them all up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the real ones, not the reprints.
Yeah.
But
I think we can wrap now.
What?
I think we've been on for about 45 minutes. I think it's time to wrap up for the day.
Okay. David, you want to wrap up?
I think so. Well, go ahead, Al.
Okay. Even though we've been basically off topic for most of this discussion, what we discussed here was, in effect, because of the, coronavirus scare. So, people who listen to this, please be patient, and I'm sure the next time we do this, we'll get back to some phase of baseball. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. See you next week, guys.
Okay.
You too.
Bye, David. Alan, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.